Hi, everyone, and welcome to our community conversation. I'm Layla Saad, the CEO of Common Impact, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this discussion. Today, we're going to be speaking with three extraordinary people who are here to help us deepen our understanding of the ways to create healthier communities. And we're going to talk about how cross-sector collaborations like the one we're working on today can help. So before I turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their important work, I'd like to dig just a little further into what we're getting at when we talk about pathways to healthier communities. It will come as no surprise to you that over the last couple of years, the leading causes of death in the United States were heart disease, cancer, and of course, COVID. But consider just one fact about those death rates. Black people are at the highest risk for cancer deaths, even though white people have the highest rate of new cancers. Like me, you probably find that statistic upsetting. You may have even personally experienced that statistic in your own families or in your neighborhoods. In fact, the fact that I'm even calling it a statistic might be leaving a bad taste in your mouth, so I apologize for that. Because while we're trying to understand a national phenomenon, those are actual real human lives. So the question for those of us who care about fairness have to ask is, why is this happening and what can we do to help? The reason we're holding this event today is to draw attention to the fact that there are many underlying factors that impact health in our communities. We're drawing attention to the fact that because we've learned about a few things about health, and we've learned and we believe that the opportunity for health starts long before you need medical care, and that health starts long before illness in our homes, in our schools, and in our jobs. And we believe that your neighborhood or your job shouldn't be hazardous to your health, and that everyone should have the opportunity to make the choices that allow them to live a long, healthy life, regardless of their income, education, or racial or ethnic background. So that's why we're working with a variety of organizations that we are today. And that's why we've invited three inspiring leaders from a spectrum of organizations to talk to us about their work to create safe, supportive, caring, healthy communities, starting with young people and moving all the way up the cycle of life. So we're going to hear about how supporting formerly incarcerated people will lead to better health, and how supporting vulnerable young people's mental health will lead to better health. And finally, because Common Impact is an organization that builds collaborations between the nonprofit and the private sector, we're going to hear about how cross-sector collaboration can empower nonprofits working on health issues so that they can be even more effective and more impactful in the communities they're serving. It's our experience that when nonprofits access the skills and expertise of the private sector's most valuable resources, its human resources, i.e., all of the volunteers here today, that helps to enable inspiring leaders like Ron Waddell and Isiah Tucker, who are here with us today, to focus on the important work of supporting people where they live to create healthier communities. So with that, let's bring in our panelists. And I'm thrilled to kick off this conversation with Ron Waddell, founder and executive director of legendary Legacies. Ron, thank you for being here. Would you please start by telling us who you are, what you do, and how your organization contributes to healthier communities?
Certainly, thank you. Pleasure to be here. I'm gonna steal Isaiah's introduction that I liked from last time. I am the father of Joshua and Isiah Waddell. What brings me to the conversation today is the fact that I am a founder, co-founder, and executive director of Legendary Legacies. We're dedicated to interrupting cycles of incarceration while promoting healthy masculinity. And there are a number of ways that our work contributes to healthy communities. First and foremost, disease prevention, connection to housing. We know all these other social determinants of health that our returning citizens face are very, very challenging. And so our work is to support them in bridging those gaps while also engaging with cognitive behavioral theory so that we can support them as well. We're constantly letting our folks know that it's not all your fault, but there is a responsibility you have in your rehabilitation.
Thank you, Ron. Welcome again. And let's go over to Isiah Tucker. Isiah, you're the executive director of an organization called Inner Voice Outer Change for Youth. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how your organization contributes to healthier communities?
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just excited to be here just to start and to say thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about me and what we do at Inner Voice Outer Change for Youth. As Ron said, I like to lead with, I am the father of Elijah Tucker. He is my 11-year-old son. A lot of what I do professionally and personally, it revolves around him. And so Inner Voice Outer Change for Youth is an organization I co-founded. And essentially what we do is we do our best to create space for teens to tell their truth, tell their story, learn about mental wellness through self-expression. And we use sort of 3 different tools for that, which are music, videography, and photography. So we just try and create that space for them to use those tools to tell us a little bit about themselves. The main thing that we do in terms of community and empowerment and community activism revolves around sort of that upstream work that we see. Working with youth, we can kind of look at statistics and see the path that they might go down. And so we do the work to connect them with community partners, reconnect them with family, and just keeping them engaged in positive, healthy outlets.
Thank you so much, Isiah. We're so thrilled to have you here today. And then I'd like to turn it to Lucy and bring in Lucy Darragh. She's the Director of Strategy and Social Impact at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. Lucy, I have heard you speak so passionately about what you have learned through your partnership with Ron and Legendary Legacies. Would you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about some of those learnings from those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for the opportunity. So happy to be here with all of you. Lucy Darragh, I work at Blue Cross on our corporate citizenship team. And I think, Ron, we met maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And we have had the real privilege of being able to work alongside Legendary Legacies and learn really deeply from Ron's work. I would just say broadly what we try to do on our citizenship team is, and Layla, as you queued up so well in your powerful opening, is we've really had a reckoning at our company over the last few years in thinking about the deep inequity that's in our healthcare system. And on our side of the shop and our citizenship team, we're thinking about the sorts of organizations that we might be able to partner with, like Ron's, that are really making a difference around the social determinants or the social drivers of health. Particularly environmental justice, racial justice, space, and food justice. We launched a program a few years ago that Ron participated in that kind of reframed the way that we thought about our traditional grant funding or giving organizations financial support, where we decided to try to leverage wraparound support for organizations and what sorts of skills-based opportunities there might be for us to and connect our colleagues to the great work that's happening with some of our nonprofit partners to have a more sort of robust, partnership, if you will. Key to that, I would say, is sort of reciprocity. And Ron has always been really at the forefront of helping us learn from him and learn alongside him in the work that he does. One of the things that we've loved seeing is how he also sort of extends out to other organizations and is also really thinking about, community building, community development, collaboratively working across organizations and sectors to solve problems. He has a really great podcast. Ron, I'm going to do some props for that. Where we sort of have watched and learned from him as he's reached across and mentored and collaborated with different organizations. That really speaks to us at Blue Cross and our team. I feel very privileged to get to do the work that I do in thinking about how to rally resources and what we can to support organizations, but we also really like to roll up our sleeves and do the work alongside of the folks that we have the privilege to partner with. And there's a lot of trust that happens when that takes place. Ron's been great too, and I'll stop talking. Ron, it's like my Ron praise here, but I would just say it's been really great. There are so many things that you can't learn from a grant application, and there are so many things that you can't learn from a report that a nonprofit might share with a funder that you really get to dig in on when you have a conversation with someone that's in your space. I think, Ron, one of the things that I've loved hearing you talk about is what happens in some of your food access programs when you've been able to connect the folks that you serve with some of the food pantries that have been distributing food that you've been a part of, and sort of the amazing things that happen when those groups come together. And I would just say, before I pass the mic back, that sort of connections within our community and sort of creative problem solving and working together, I think is really key to building a healthy community. That sort of cross-team, cross-sector work is key, because these are really massive problems that certainly people sitting at a desk in a healthcare organization cannot solve without incredible partners and community builders giving us guidance along the way.
Thank you so much, Lucy. You touched on all of our favorite topics here: common impact partnerships and collaboration, and the value of all of that. Before we hear more about that from Ron and Isiah, I'd love to just hear more about the work that you're doing. It's clear that it's really inspired Lucy and others. So starting with Ron, would you tell us more about your organization's work, and maybe in particular tell us about a particular initiative that you're most proud of?
Yes. So our work is, wow, our participants, as I've come to grow the organization and grow with the organization as any leader should, what I've come to learn is what I thought we were doing is very different than what we actually are doing. So initially, what I would tell folks is that I work with young men that are involved with the criminal justice system. During our first theory of change consultancy work, I was asked, "So, do you want to work with those who are truant?" I said, "No, that's not the participants." And so now, Layla, if I was to, when I'm asked who do we work with, I say, well, if someone's referred to our program and they do not get in trouble with the law in the first 4 to 6 months, then you sent me the wrong person. Let that sink. Because our participants that we're working with aren't ones that fit positive youth development models. They don't fit your traditional conveyor belt. Put them in here, add these things, and on the back end, you'll get the outcome. Our participants are those that we have to go find. We have to go look for. Also, through that theory of change work, what we determined is where our primary referrals come from is being present in areas where there's high degrees of violence and or drug use. And so with that, our primary referrals come from working inside our county jail. We have teams that go inside the county jail that will begin the relationship working with those men that are returning ideally 6 months before they come out. And then we have a series of community cookouts that we do in the summer. We don't promote them because it's not for the mayor to come. Don't really care if you're there. It's really to build that sense of community and weave ourselves into the community as a resource, not an external partner that's dropping in to offer certain services. If you look broadly at our work, there are kind of two buckets. The first bucket would be the younger folks. We call that our Legacy Builders program, and that's funded through a couple different state sources. But that's 17 to 25, that same population. And we're working with our law enforcement partners here. If there's gun or knife violence that occurs between anyone in that age group, we have a crisis response team that'll respond to that to mitigate retaliatory violence, but ultimately to begin to build that relationship with the young person to hopefully fully enroll in our case management program, which is based on CBT, as well as motivational interviewing and recovery coaching. The other side of our work is our Legacy Links program. That is for Black and Latino males that are 18 plus who are returning to the community. with a history of substance use disorder. And so we're working with that population very similarly, but those are kind of the two overarching um, programmatic areas that we focus on demographic wise. I'll say this too before I pause. There's a book called The Good Life, and it's the longest study on human happiness. Harvard University embarked on this over a course of a number of years, and they look at overall health, well-being, and what they determined is it's the quality of your relationships that really determine your overall well-being. Regardless of socioeconomic status, all those things, and we know those have impact, but the quality of your relationships. And so the core of our work is that it's relationship building. For our young men and the men that we work with, there's a lot of historical trauma, a lot of abandonment, a lot of areas in which I have not been in healthy relationship. And there was a study done by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and they asked returning citizens before they were coming out, what is it that you need to help you not recidivate? And about most people on this call can guess what they said, and it's great rhetoric. It's tremendous rhetoric. If I can just get a job, and I hear that all the time. There's nothing that stops a bullet like a job. That sounds great, and it fits well on a meme, and it fits well on all that, but that's really not the truth. When they stayed with that group for 3 years, and they stayed with them for 3 years because the research shows that if you can avoid recidivism for 3 years, your chances of recidivating drop precipitously. And so they stayed with that group, and 3 years after they returned, they asked them, what was it that kept you from recidivating? And none of them said a job. 73% said something like, it was the support network I had around me. And so for us, that's the core of what we do, is being that sense of community. We're not clinical. We connect people. I've said to folks that we're kind of cultural brokers. And the core of my staff, most of our staff have had that lived experience. And so equipping them with the skills to be able to go back into their community and back into those relationships in those neighborhoods where they came from, equipped with the knowledge and their own rehabilitation to walk alongside these brothers as they get back into community to pursue their greatness.
That's really powerful, Ron. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I think it resonates definitely with me and the people who work with us at Common Impact. Because we have been talking about, and Lucy, I've heard you say things like this too, there's a bit of a shift in the mindset of those of us who are working in the nonprofit sector. And one thing we're trying to shift toward is understanding from the perspective of those we are purportedly trying to help, what are their real needs, rather than just saying, have a job, have money. I mean, money's always good, but have this, have that program, but actually understand what they need. And this is a great segue to Isiah's work, because I know you've also talked about listening to the young people that you work with and really understanding their needs, and that was the inspiration for founding the organization that you did. Can you talk a little bit about that too, Isiah?
Yeah, thank you. First off, very well said, Ron. I think just what the work that, Ron and I, obviously we're friends, we know each other, but the work that they're doing at Legendary Legacies, and the way you highlighted the importance of that relationship, that's everything from even clinical perspective to just basic, how do we help someone? So we definitely at Inner Voice Outer Change focus on that a lot as well. And, to your point, what you mentioned, that's what sparked off my vision for Inner Voice Outer Change. It was a young man who basically told me I wasn't listening to him, and he was 100% correct. And this is a young man that I was working with for, months. And so that's at the foundation of what we do at Inner Voice Outer Change. It's all about youth empowerment, empowering them to talk openly about what they want, what they need, how they feel. It's creating that space for that. And as a social worker and a clinician, just being really intentional about saying to them that their voice matters, painting a different picture around what mental wellness is from a cultural perspective, but also from our youth. Naturally, historically, it's been about that traditional sit down, individual therapy on a couch. Tell me, how does that make you feel? And at Inner Voice Outer Change, we're sort of trying to change that narrative to say, you know how you feel. Maybe you don't have the language for it. Maybe it's hard to articulate for you, but here are some tools to help you with that. And so that's really a big part of what we do. I think I missed the other part of the question though.
Well, Isaiah, I don't know if you'd be willing to share that story about the young person you were talking to. I personally have 3 teenage girls, so I could really relate.
Sure.
I think that everybody would be interested to hear it.
Okay, sure. So basically, you know, at the time I was working for Department of Children and Families, so Massachusetts State Child Protective Agency, and I was an adolescent worker, and I got this young man, his case, if you will. He was about 17 years old, and as you all know, at 18, it's like, we're aging out, what are we gonna do? And I got his profile and his case, and he had been in like 20 plus different placements within a year's time. So naturally, what does he do when I'm working with him? He runs away. You know, he's running away from every placement. So it was late, around 9 or 10 one night, I get notification that they found him. So he was at the police station. And I decided to go and pick him up and bring him to his next placement. And I was pissed, you know, because in my mind, I'm doing everything. What social worker goes out at 9 o'clock to go pick a kid up? Like, you know, I'm here, I'm trying. So I'm yelling at him, like, what do you want, man? I'm trying to help you. And that's when he said, and it like almost makes me cry, because he's literally looked at me and he was like, you're not listening. And just to give you a little bit of a backstory, every time I was with this kid, he was rapping, and he was horrible. He was like the worst rapper you can imagine. And he was rapping about, you know, having sex and doing drugs and these things I knew that just weren't him. So to fast forward, you know, I said to him, you're right, I'm not listening to you. And what I'm going to do is connect you with a friend of mine who has a studio. The biggest thing is you have to stay in your placement. You have to sort of follow the basic rules. And so he did. To fast forward, he 6 months later graduated from the program. And what he was creating in the studio was magical. He started to talk more about him, his life, what he really wants for himself. We did exercises around sort of like past, present, and future self. You know, what do you see for yourself in your future? And so that's what sparked off the vision for Inner Voice Outer Change, and literally just wanting more of that for our kids.
Thank you for sharing that, Isaiah. It's a really meaningful, powerful story. So I just wanted to share with everybody on the session today that you are welcome to also ask some questions of our panelists today. And if you'd like to do so, please use the raise hand function, or you can post a question in the chat, and I'll keep an eye on both of those. I'll keep moving forward with a few more, but please don't hesitate to jump in as well. So I'd love to go back to you, Ron. It's great to hear about the work of your organization and how thoughtful and intentional you've been about creating it. Can you tell us about something that you're working on right now that excites you about the future of your work and your communities?
Oh, for sure. And I did not answer the second part of your first question, so I'll briefly answer that. What's something that I'm proud of? What I'm proud of is Gabriel Rodriguez. Gabriel Rodriguez is our director of outreach, and also a former participant of ours. Gabriel's last incarceration was in 2017, and for me, yesterday we met with a new participant, and he set up the meeting, someone that is going to be enrolled. And for me, I was absolutely blown away to sit there and do this initial engagement with Gabriel, who I used to be just like when Isaiah was sharing his story. I used to get frustrated with him, wouldn't follow through. But to see where he is now and to see how he has changed his life and is now giving back, man, that gives me the chicken skin, and really just is what I want us to be able to do. So that is the most proudest accomplishment that I have to date, to be a part of that. Right now, 2 things we're working on. One's a personal endeavor, the other one here within the organization, but all connected, even to our conversation around healthy communities. The first is what Lucy alluded to. We were fortunate enough during COVID to be a very small organization of three. And so we were very nimble when everyone else closed. We kind of looked around and were like, hey, bro, you want to keep doing this work? Let's keep doing this work. And so during the pandemic, we had a small program that was funded under the Greater Worcester Community Foundation to provide food to our seniors and those who are immunocompromised in the community. And so during that, we had some funds for about 2 or 3 months to hire participants to be that transport. We were borrowing a van from a local church to be able to pick up everything. But hey, in nonprofit work, you just make it happen. But the beautiful thing, besides telling my brothers that this is probably the first time that you're masked up and actually giving something instead of taking something, was the opportunity that we saw as they interacted within the community and the questions they begin to ask right in their own neighborhood. As we brought food to different houses and different places, it was like, how come they don't have food? There's one particular story that stuck out to me. Like this brother Christian, there was a family that we brought some food to, and the little girl, she couldn't have been more than 5 or 6. She was like, "Can I have an extra box of cookies?" And our stuff was pre-packaged, and so everyone got this. And so Chris is like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "No, she can't have the box of cookies." And he was like, "I'm giving it to her," and he took the box of cookies, and we figured it out. But he was like, "I don't understand why we can't give food. Why don't they have food?" And so it opened up a whole different conversation for these brothers that brought their perspective much more broadly than them. Fast forward to now, we took what we learned in that pilot program and have drafted a couple grants, and we're now launching with the help of Blue Cross Blue Shield and our partnerships, um, what we're calling our legacy transport. So we've partnered up with the Worcester County Food Bank. And this is the other thing we learned during the pandemic. In Worcester, there are probably about 30 neighborhood pantries. And for those on the call who aren't familiar with Worcester, I'll give you this. It is the second largest city in New England outside of Boston. We have 206,000 people. Most people don't know that, so that's a fun fact. Um, but in Worcester, there are about 30 neighborhood food pantries that all have to come to a regional food hub to secure their food and get it back to those pantries. Most of those pantries are either run at churches or other community-based organizations, and they're run by volunteers, mostly who are either retired or have extra time. So there are seniors. And so during the pandemic, we saw that as well. People were loading up their CRVs to try to get this food, and we're talking thousands of pounds of food for some of these sites. Um, and so with this grant that we're put forward in our legacy transport program is to actually employ our participants. We were able to secure a van to be that labor force to transport the food within our community to those neighborhood pantries. And so for us, it's a transitional employment program where we can really cultivate that sense of community. And for our participants, we have recognized that the resource we really need uh, is a place for them to fail. When our returning citizens hit the community, they are expected to be somewhere socially and economically where they're just not ready to be mentally, spiritually, or emotionally. And so we need a space to kind of figure that out. And so within that cohort of folks that will be doing that, that's our real work. It's not just the dollars that we're going to give them. It's the fact that the foreman who's leading that is someone who was formerly incarcerated, who now has that skill to help de-escalate conflict resolution, cognitive behavioral theory skills. Because the resource we want them to be able to have is when you're on the job or wherever else you go, um, viscerally, what are you feeling? And then how do you de-escalate yourself? I could tell you that till you're blue in the face. But until you've actually done that and begin to rewire the synapses in your brain, really, we're fighting an uphill battle. So within here, we're addressing two things. One is that work within our participants to help them rewire the way they think within a community of brothers that understand and can support because they all kind of come from where they came from. And then secondarily, using that as a vehicle to support our community as they face food insecurity. And so connecting them with that network of people as well within those spaces. So that is something I'm super excited about. It's started here in Worcester, but I'm hopeful that we can expand this. We're starting with 4 pantries, and it's right now in its infancy, but I see so much potential for that beyond even just our city of Worcester, throughout Worcester County, other sites outside our city proper are also doing this work. And so as we continue to refine this, we see a great opportunity to bring healthy communities, not just through food insecurity, but also the rehabilitation through this work with our participants.
Thank you, Ron. You're already bringing up a lot of topics that we'd like to talk about next around partnerships and collaborations and the power that that can bring. Before we do, I just wanted to turn it back to Isiah too, to ask him the same question. What is it that you're working on right now that excites you? And I think people in the room would probably be really interested to hear about the connection between music and young people and creative expression and how that helps people to self-develop and the many ways that it can create ultimately healthy people, healthy communities.
Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun engaging with the youth because, as you can imagine, they have a lot of colorful and creative ideas and the ways that they want to express and communicate what's going on in their world. But I will also answer a bit of like a project or initiative that we are proud of quickly. You know, we are fairly new young organization, a nonprofit. But last school year, we were able to work in 3 high schools in Worcester through our after school music program. And so we bring all of our music recording equipment to each school intentionally because we want to make sure we're, limiting barriers of transportation, finances, all the things that just get in the way. So why it's so powerful to me, especially being new to the nonprofit world, is the way that the Worcester community supported us, IVOC, in helping support the kids. It's that concept of like help someone. And so our goal was just to be in the space with the kids, have some fun, but we also wanted to listen to the kids. And so they thought of, well, we'd love to be on the radio. Well, we connected with Unity Radio in Worcester, and we were on their Unity in the Community segment, where 5 of our kids were able to talk about mental health, what that means to them, what that meant to them, and then also like just music and how they have fun with music. We also were able to pull off what the kids called, what we ended up calling the Summer Jump Off, IVOC Summer Jump Off event, which was hosted in a space called JMAC in Worcester, where the kids from our music program performed songs that they created, but we also had a videography program where they showcased their music video. So I think that to me was really the motivation we needed to keep going and connect with community and learn how to do it in a way that didn't feel so like business-like, just really, again, the concept of helping someone help someone. What I'm excited about for our future with IVOC is our community engagement initiative, which the concept of it is around the kids in our after school music program this school year that achieve either honor roll or they bump their grade up 1 letter in each course. They're able to enter our raffle. And the raffle, if they win the raffle, it gives them access to 6 different sort of self-care outlets. Yoga is one, manicure and pedicure is another one, haircuts, beauty salon, dance, and MMA. And, there's sort of 3 parts to it that are the focus. One, we understand self-care can come in all forms. So we want to kind of create that picture for our kids to say self-care doesn't have to just be whatever, individual therapy or going for a walk. It can be kind of anything that helps you reconnect with yourself. And on that note, what happens in a barbershop, for example, when you go to get a haircut? Well, you have to be still. So you're literally there, you're receiving care, physically getting the haircut, but also we know the power of a barber and that relationship that is typically cultivated, the conversations that happen. And so we're going to kind of expose them to that, but also teach them how this can help, right? Leading into exposing them to entrepreneurs in their community, folks that have lived in their community but are doing something with themselves, and also hopefully fostering a longer term connection and relationship between our students, not just the community, but that specific service provider. So that's something we're very, very much excited about. We've already started to roll it out. And at the end of each quarter, we'll do the raffle. And we're choosing 2 kids from each of the 5 schools that are after school programs.
Thank you, Isiah. So let's turn the conversation now to partnerships, and in particular, since this is what Common Impact focuses on, and the reason that we're all here today, I'd love to talk about the relationships between companies and nonprofits and how they can support each other. So let me turn it over to Lucy to get us started, and then Ron and Isiah, I'd love to hear from your perspective the needs that you have, just like we're asking our young people and asking the communities, what are their needs? I'd love to hear from what your needs are. But first, Lucy, would you just talk about some of the key challenges that you see when it comes to health equity, and what are some of the ways that Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts is supporting nonprofits to address those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, our team, as I mentioned earlier, is really thinking about the social determinants of health and sort of how that is influencing overall health, of course, within, a health plan environment. So not necessarily medical outcomes as much as sort of overall health outcomes. And I think that what we see in terms of challenges is just there are so many areas of need. There are so many opportunities to sort of dig in and do more. And our communities are diverse, and our communities need lots of support and resources in lots of ways: mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. And it can feel, I think, for a lot of us, really overwhelming. Where I find inspiration and sort of, a capacity to kind of keep digging in around that is also looking at the strengths of these communities, especially led by brilliant nonprofit leaders like we have here, who are doing such incredible work and really are the experts around community development, community engagement, and ultimately, I think, really spearheading community health, whether it's a nonprofit or a community health center. And I find a lot of purpose in thinking about how a company can leverage their resources. A lot of times it's the time and talent of folks, like you all participating in this skills-based series to engage. And I think we at Blue Cross don't see ourselves as sort of being experts in all of the aspects that are important to health, but we have skills to contribute and we have resources to contribute. And our sweet spot is being able to, as you all have been talking about, hear what our nonprofits need, not necessarily in sort of mission fulfillment, because that's really, you look at these guys know what they're doing. It's around sort of capacity building. And that, again, is not to suggest that Isiah and Ron don't have the skill sets to do that work, but we're giving them, extra oomph to get some things done. So, for instance, Ron knows a lot about data, knows a lot about program evaluation, and hasn't necessarily, been able to pause from the incredible work that he's doing, supporting in a very deep way the men that he serves. And we probably have colleagues, and many of them are on this supporting this work today, who might have those skills and be able to contribute them in a sort of engaging way, working with a smart leader. Our colleagues, and I hope you all today, get so much out of that experience. We're learning more and deeper ways about the communities that we have the privilege of serving and working alongside. And I think it brings a lot to be able to see how your skills translate in a different environment, and also working with a team of people and building those relationships and thinking about complex issues in different ways. Comes back to us at Blue Cross and helps us think about the work that we do in a more effective way or from a different perspective. I think that's so important. I don't know if I answered your question, Layla, but that's, I think challenges are the strengths too, right? So we know there's an overwhelming amount of work to be done. And we also know that there are some incredible organizations that are digging in on that work. And we see lots of opportunities to uplift that.
Lucy, you answered the question
I did, all right.
completely and in a way that makes a lot of sense to people who work at Common Impact and who work in this area where we're trying to make available resources from the skills and expertise of professionals that we work with, so that we can free up the time of Ron and Isiah and others so that they can focus on the really meaningful work. So with that, let me turn it over to the two of you. Ron, if you don't mind going first, tell us if there is a role for professionals to support you donating their own skills and times and resource. What is it that you would most want from that?
So the short answer is unequivocally, right? Like it is. I think, as I thought about this question, Layla, and thank you for it. And probably because I'm in the zeitgeist of this right now, because I'm having conversations around all of it. But I think that what I would like to share, nonprofits are businesses with a different tax code. All right. The unique process within a nonprofit, though, is that the payer is not the recipient of the services, right? That's kind of unique. And so, like, the end user are not the same ones. And so, what we're known for is that programming piece, the pictures, that component. That is, dare I say, the product, right? But all the necessary components that go in on the back of the house exist also while trying to deliver that product. So the expertise of people that we were able to partner with at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and those that are on the call today, your area of expertise within your business development and whatever area you are, to be able to pull on that from a volunteer basis within a nonprofit is absolutely, I don't even have word. It leaves you speechless. One of the things that we found in working with Blue Cross Blue Shield, and as we talk about healthy communities, most of the issues that we're addressing from a public health lens are longitudinal issues. And so our traditional grant cycles really want to look at outcomes, in my opinion, that are unrealistic timeframes. That said, where does this connect? A lot of our funding came from sources that had prescribed databases and key performance indicators. Those prescribed databases and key performance indicators really gave you high level outcomes and outputs, but really didn't speak to the iterative impact that we saw happening within our population. Partnering with Lucy and Blue Cross Blue Shield, we began to have this organic conversation around this challenge. What that led to was a skill-based volunteer team that initially helped us identify for us what are the KPIs that we want to track, that we want to report on, that would speak to those iterative changes. And then secondarily, they came back as a tremendous partner and said, we will also help you vet out what software would best help you accomplish this. So I don't have a data management background. I don't have data analytics. I don't know IT. I just know we need it. And so to have this cohort of folks to sit there and meet with and talk through and be on the call, like it was with us. It was almost like I had this super force, because I would say this is what we're hoping, and then someone would jump in and say, ask a technical question that I can't even repeat now because I don't know what they were asking. And then they would explain on the back end, this is why this is important. This is why you'd want to go that way. And so all the way up to this point now that we have started to capture, this is our first year now, capturing the data that we want to capture so we can speak to people. And that's impossible without the support of not just throwing money at it. And in addition, we've built tremendous relationships. Some of the relationships here with Lucy, but there have been participants that were part of that skill-based volunteer team that have donated to our organization individually because of the connection that happened within that work. So I would say unequivocally, the skills that you bring to the table are paramount for our nonprofit partners. For me, especially as someone who started it, in Isiah, we start this because of a passion. We start this because of a need. The business side of it, yeah, we'll get to that, right? And we learn that as we go. So to be able to lean on the expertise of folks like you guys on the call from a corporate perspective, is absolutely invaluable.
Thank you, Ron. Isiah, I know you're newer to the nonprofit world, but would you like to weigh in?
Of course, yeah. I think Ron said it. Both you guys said it really well. I think just being still new, but also just like everyone on this call, hearing hearing the pain from our kids, hearing the pain from their parents, it leaves you sort of at like oh, I got to do something, but like Ron spoke to, the data, the analytics that folks are looking at to validate the need, it just doesn't line up, and it's hard to be able to elevate youth voice, client voice, to get folks to say, oh, I get it now. So when us IVOC, we're requesting or putting in for a grant proposal or doing fundraising, whatever it is, the disconnect there is very frustrating in terms of understanding why we're asking what we're asking for, understanding the need. And for me, learning how to navigate that is very hard, right? How do I process what's this rejection? Because it's not rejecting me, it's rejecting all these things that we're hearing in terms of needs and understanding the system. So I know I'm kind of being all over the place, but the basic part is, how do we elevate youth voice to sort of put a circle around the need, kind of get rid of the data a little bit, but understanding the need and the concept of how we approach addressing the need from a systemic level. So that, I feel like that's what Ron was mentioning a bit, and but that's the biggest challenge in navigating sort of the system that we have, knowing the system needs to change and trying to disrupt it a bit.
Isiah, if I could just jump back in on the end of that.
Please. Yeah.
Well said for the folks that are listening, why that's important. Why that's so important is, if I've been saying this a lot of our structures will allow you to stay in compliance and not have impact. That would never happen in a for-profit business, right? You couldn't just give me we increased sales, but what did it do, right? If you don't give me what's going on. And so this work if particularly within the data piece, for me, I'll say, is without this for us, then what happens is I'm no longer focusing on the demographic that I want to focus on, because I'll start focusing on the demographic that'll give me the outcomes that my funder wants. And so I miss out on that level of participant that's below what will fit these traditional models. So being able to speak to that, like Isiah said, and get their voice and get that component into in your expertise, allows us to really engage with those that are at the ground level that really need the work. Not saying that all our young people don't, but particularly for us, we're looking at a class that's even below that you have to go find. And so they're not there yet. So this is very, very, very important within our nonprofit sector, so that we can create the impact and ripple out healthy communities that we really want to see. It's the folks, as we heal them, that will create those healthy communities. It's not me or even Isiah. It's as we help them heal and they build those relationships, they will then take that and be able to bring that along. And so to be able to focus on those who have the most need, that are most marginalized, and bring healing to them, allows that ripple effect to come out through the community as well.
Ron, Isiah, Lucy, thank you so much. You landed on a great note focused on impact and what we're really trying to all achieve together here today. I failed to get to a question that came up in the chat, but I want to leave it for everybody. It's a little bit of thought for us for the future. And to me, it points to why we bring these communities together, because this is where innovative ideas like the one in the chat was, come from. And this is from Regina. She asks about having mental health providers in barbershops to support men of color as they're in that space anyways together. I just thought it was a really interesting idea. I'll leave it with you because we have to close and move to our next segment. But I just wanted to thank you all again for participating with us. It was so great to have the three of you on with us. Really appreciated your time and insights, and I'm so happy that we can be all together today on this day of impact, which we are going to move to next. So first, thank you all again to Ron, Isiah, and to Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity.